Are you an aspiring notary looking to join millions of other notaries? Start your journey with the Notary Public Foundation by Derek Spruill. This essential guide provides the step-by-step process to becoming commissioned in your state. Don't stumble into the role. Walk into it with confidence. Grab your copy of the Notary Public Foundation by Derek Spruill on Amazon today.
Welcome to Notary Knowledge. Marylyn and Eddie here, and we're so glad you're hanging out with us today.
Absolutely. So glad you're here.
And real quick, if you are looking for even more content after this, be sure to check out our video podcast, No Notary, with Eddie Montes Travis, and of course, Marylyn's 90 Seconds of Notary.
Yeah, lots of great stuff over there, especially if you're just getting started in this world.
Totally. So today we are getting into a topic that, honestly, it's so misunderstood by the general public. Like, think about the last time you went to a nightclub.
Okay, setting the scene.
Right. The bouncer at the door, they don't care if you actually like the music playing inside. They don't care if the DJ's any good or if the drinks are just, ridiculously overpriced.
Right. They aren't music critics. And they definitely aren't bartenders. Their entire focus is restricted to just that entryway.
Exactly. And they're looking at one thing and one thing only, your ID. Are you exactly who you say you are? And are you walking through those doors willingly? That incredibly narrow focus is actually the entire foundation of the club's security.
Because if they get distracted by, the quality of the music, the whole system just falls apart.
Right. And that boundary, that absolute refusal to judge what happens past the velvet rope, that's what makes their authority function, which, perfectly captures the reality of the profession we're exploring today, the surprisingly intense, heavily regulated world of the notary public.
It really is intense. And today we're pulling from a fantastic stack of sources. We've got official guidelines from the Notary Public Association, bulletins from the National Notary Association.
We even have highly specific equipment manuals for notary seals.
Yeah, the technical stuff. And of course, excerpts from Derek Spruill's Notary Knowledge books, specifically his framework on the architecture of professional notarization. It's a phenomenal stack of information.
It really is. And our mission today is to just extract the reality of this job, because we're looking at a profession that operates at this incredibly volatile intersection of high-stakes legal compliance and intense human psychology.
Yeah, most people just think of a notary as a bureaucratic rubber stamp presser, right?
Yeah.
Just sitting at a desk in the back of some local shipping store.
Yeah, just pushing paper.
Exactly. But the reality is that they are the active first-line gatekeepers against massive fraud. And to understand the hidden intensity of this job, we really have to dismantle the biggest misconception right out of the gate, which is, what a U.S. notary actually does versus what people assume they do.
Right, because the confusion actually makes total sense when you look at it globally.
It does. In many parts of the world, places that use a civil law system, like much of Europe or Latin America, a notary is actually a highly trained senior lawyer.
Wait, like a full-blown attorney?
Oh, yeah. They have graduate degrees in notarial law. They actually draft complex legal instruments like real estate conveyances and wills. And crucially, their seal carries what is known as executory force.
I saw that term in the sources. What does executory force actually mean in, the real world?
Well, it basically means their stamp is equivalent to a judge's gavel.
Whoa!
Yeah. If a civil law notary stamps a debt agreement and you default on that debt, the creditor doesn't even need to take you to trial to prove the debt exists. They can immediately seize your property because the notary seal is treated as absolute, unquestionable legal truth by the state.
That is massive power. But that is completely divorced from how it works here in the United States.
Entirely divorced.
Yeah.
In the U.S., a notary public is typically a layperson appointed by the state. Their core function focuses almost entirely on the signer, not the document itself. They serve as an impartial witness.
And this is where that bouncer analogy really clicks for me, because people assume the notary is like reading their 100-page mortgage document to make sure the interest rate is fair, or that the terms are legal.
Right, but according to the Notary Public Code of Professional Responsibility, they aren't reading those provisions at all. They scan a document for two very specific things: to ensure there are no blank spaces that could be, filled in fraudulently later, and to log the document's title in their journal.
So that deliberate ignorance of the contract's terms brings up one of the strictest rules in this profession, right? The absolute prohibition against the unauthorized practice of law, or UPL.
Yes. The boundaries here are incredibly rigid.
So let's put this into a real scenario for someone just getting into this. If I bring a stack of documents to a notary and I say, "Hey, I'm a little confused about paragraph 4. What happens to my house if I sign this?" Or even just, "Do I really need to fill out this specific section? Why is answering that illegal?" It just feels like basic customer service.
Because answering those questions requires interpreting the legal consequence of the document. If that notary is not a licensed attorney, offering an interpretation is illegal. And the sources mention this prohibition even extends to the type of notarization itself. Like, if a document doesn't have the specific notarial wording pre-printed on it, the notary cannot just pick a certificate for you.
So they can't tell you whether you need a jurat or an acknowledgement?
They absolutely cannot. And the difference between those two is legally profound.
Right.
An acknowledgement simply confirms that you are who you say you are and you sign the document willingly. A jurat, on the other hand, requires the notary to administer an oath. You have to swear or affirm under penalty of perjury that the contents of the document are entirely true.
Oh, wow. So if a notary chooses which one applies, they're basically making a legal determination about how that document will be enforced in court.
Exactly. They can explain the dictionary definitions of those acts to you, but the final choice must rest entirely with the signer.
But wait, if they aren't reading the document itself and they can't give you any advice on the legal consequences of it, how does their mere presence actually stop fraud? Like, it seems like they're just watching someone hold a pen.
Well, verifying identity, confirming willingness to sign, and assessing basic mental competence, that is the ultimate fraud prevention. Think about how real fraud actually occurs in real estate or estate planning. It rarely happens because a contract's wording is slightly unfair.
Right. It's usually something much more blatant.
Fraud happens when someone forges a signature on a deed, or when a vulnerable person is forced to sign away their life savings against their will. So when a signer asks a notary for, simple advice on a form, they are actually asking the notary to abandon their neutrality. And the notary's absolute, unwavering neutrality is the bedrock of the document's legal integrity. They are protecting the integrity of the transaction, not the terms of the deal.
That makes so much sense. I mean, think about the last time you bought a car or signed a lease. Remember that weird knot in your stomach as you were handed the pen? That psychological tension is what notaries are trained to monitor. And since their entire job hinges on verifying willingness and competence, we really have to look at what happens when those factors are compromised.
Yeah, this is a concept Derek Sproul's framework refers to as cognitive regulation. The sources talk extensively about dotted line anxiety.
I love that term, dotted line anxiety. It's so vivid. It perfectly describes that acute psychological stress that hits people right when they are about to make massive, irreversible life choices. Transferring properties, setting up healthcare directives, distributing estates. The stakes are just monumental.
Yeah. It represents a major inflection point in a person's life. And extreme stress can actually cloud a signer's cognitive capacity. It can severely compromise the voluntary nature of their signature. So the notary has to actively monitor the room for behavioral red flags. We are talking about incoherent communication, obvious hallucinations, or family members aggressively pushing a signer to put pen to paper.
Okay, there is a highly specific, real-world example of this in the sources from a Florida mobile notary named Edith Gonzalez. And her story paints a perfect picture of this tension. So she was called out to a rehab center to notarize documents for a $95,000 equity loan.
Yeah.
And she does everything right. She calls ahead, speaks to the husband on the phone, and he sounds completely clear, coherent, ready to go.
But the reality on the ground is completely different. When she actually arrives at the facility and goes to find the wife, she finds her in a wheelchair by the nurse's station. The woman is sleeping, her hand is rigidly bent, and when she finally wakes up, she is completely disoriented.
Yeah, she tells Aida that her husband asked her to sign some papers, but she has absolutely no idea what they are for or what a $95,000 equity loan even means. And this is where Ada has to do the absolute hardest part of the job. She refuses the notarization. She walks away from the fee. She goes back to the husband to tell him she can't proceed. And he immediately gets his son on the phone, who starts screaming at Aida, promising to come down and basically witness the signature himself to force it through.
But she stood her ground. It is a textbook example of the pressure these professionals face from family dynamics.
But how is that even fair? We're asking a layperson to perform a psychiatric evaluation on the fly in a hospital room while a family member is screaming at them over his cell phone. How can a notary possibly make a call on someone's mental capacity without a medical degree? That just seems impossible.
It is a massive source of anxiety, especially for novice notaries. But the National Notary Association clarifies this distinction beautifully. Notaries are not making medical diagnoses.
No.
They are not assessing whether someone has clinical dementia or Alzheimer's. They are looking for situational behavioral red flags regarding consent.
So it's not a medical evaluation, it's a situational awareness test.
Precisely. Can the person communicate coherently in this specific moment? Do they understand the basic nature of the document sitting in front of them? And crucially, are they acting on their own free will? And the notary has tactical tools to figure this out. Like if family members are hovering, dictating answers, or being overbearing, a skilled notary will separate the signer. They will literally ask the family to leave the room for a moment to ensure true willingness without an audience.
Wow, so they're building a physical firewall between the vulnerable signer and the pressure source.
Yes, and as the experts point out, a notary's most powerful tool isn't their stamp. It is the word no. Exercising the right of refusal isn't a failure of customer service. When there is coercion or a lack of basic understanding, refusing the notarization is their highest legal duty.
Which actually brings us to a segment we really enjoy, Foundational Fridays, where we focus on building table confidence. Because let's say the notary survives that intense family standoff, right? They've managed the room, they've navigated the dotted line anxiety, and the signer is fully aware and willing. They still have to physically execute the paperwork flawlessly. And looking at these sources, the physical environments are chaotic.
Oh, the physical architecture of the job is just as demanding as the mental architecture. Table confidence is everything.
Yeah, you picture these signings happening in quiet, pristine conference rooms, but mobile notaries are out in the wild. Like there's an account from a California signing agent, Vanessa Moore, who had to execute a complex loan signing outdoors on a tiny plastic children's table because of pandemic protocols.
Oh, I read that.
Or Glenn Tabor Jr. in Virginia making a 2-hour round trip to meet a signer outside in 30-degree weather with 30-mile-per-hour winds howling around them.
Trying to manage a 150-page mortgage file in a windstorm requires incredibly specific gear. We aren't talking about tossing papers into a flimsy plastic folder.
Right. The sources dive deep into the heavy-duty document architecture required. They use high-capacity hardboard clipboards that provide a perfectly rigid writing surface no matter where they are standing. They use eco-friendly, round-ring view binders that can hold over 300 pages securely. And my favorite detail, the large, non-slip tempered steel binder clips.
Oh, yeah. Those are essential.
They use these heavy-duty clips to strictly separate the client's copies from the executed return copies. Because if you mix up the stack going back to the title company with the stack staying with the homeowner, the entire deal is delayed.
But the most fascinating physical requirement involves the notary seal itself, the literal physics of the impression.
Yes. I was looking through the actual equipment manuals for the Trotter stamps, and the rules are shockingly rigid. It details that these self-inking stamps are extremely heat-sensitive. If a mobile notary leaves it in a hot car during Florida summer, the rubber actually warps and the stamp is ruined.
That's an expensive mistake.
But the mechanical application blew my mind. The manual dictates you have to hold the stamp with your thumb and fingers, apply firm vertical downward pressure, and you are strictly warned never to use the palm of your hand to push it down.
Because applying pressure with the palm distributes the force unevenly across the device, it naturally causes the stamp mechanism to rock or tilt slightly to one side.
Right, and the manual also explicitly states you can never stamp a document while it's resting on a stack of paper in a magazine. I mean, I've definitely signed important things while resting the paper on a squishy stack of mail on my kitchen counter. Why is a hard surface such a massive deal for a rubber stamp?
Well, if you look at the mechanics of the impression, the reason becomes obvious. When you stamp on a soft, yielding cushion, like a stack of other files or a mattress, that softness absorbs the vertical force of your hand.
It's like trying to build a house on a mattress instead of a concrete foundation.
Yeah.
The ground just gives way.
Exactly. Because the paper sinks slightly, the rubber plate of the stamp makes uneven contact. The center might hit the paper perfectly, but the edges lift off. This results in missing text, blurred borders, or a faded state seal.
But why is a missing border or a smudge a fatal error? Like, can't they tell what it's supposed to be?
A county recorder or a title company isn't going to guess what a smudge says. The legal standard requires perfection. If the notary's commission number, the expiration date, or the state seal isn't perfectly legible to the naked eye, the county clerk will legally reject the document. That means a simple mechanical error, just stamping on a soft surface, can instantly unravel a multi-million-dollar real estate transaction, delay a home purchase, and open the notary up to massive liability. That's why hardboard clipboard is a mandatory tool. It provides that unyielding surface for a crisp, legally compliant impression.
And that actually leads perfectly into our good question, what would you do segment.
Right.
We get so many questions from entry-level folks facing these exact chaotic scenarios.
I love these. Real scenarios from the field. Bring them on.
Okay, first up, David in Ohio asks about nervous hands. Like, he had a signer whose hands were shaking so badly they could barely hold the pen.
Well, David, you really have to assess if it's a medical condition, like a tremor, or if it's fear. Are they scared of the person sitting next to them? That's where you use your conversational skills to figure out if it's dotted line anxiety or actual coercion.
Right, okay, Jessica in Florida had an angry signer, just super hostile from the jump.
For an angry signer, Jessica, you maintain absolute neutrality. Do not absorb their anger. If they are too hostile to understand what they're signing, you exercise your right to say no and walk away.
Yeah, protect yourself first. Marcus in New Jersey was dealing with a really loud room. TV blaring, kids running around.
Marcus, you have to take control of the table. Politely ask to turn off the TV or move to a quieter room. You cannot verify willingness if you can't even hear the person.
Definitely. Elena in Texas had a rushed real estate agent breathing down her neck to hurry up.
Oh, classic. Elena, you set the pace. The agent doesn't dictate the notarization. If you rush, you make mistakes, like we just talked about with the stamp. You tell them politely that you are ensuring the legal integrity of their transaction, and it takes as long as it takes.
Love that. And finally, Kevin in Washington asked about a shaky table, like a wobbly cafe table.
Kevin, this goes right back to table confidence. Bring your hardboard clipboard. If the table shakes, you stamp on your clipboard on a flat, stable part of the surface, or even on your lap if the clipboard is rigid enough. Never compromise the stamp.
Perfect. So with the constant threat of a multi-million-dollar lawsuit over a smudge and, the intense psychological pressure of fending off angry family members in hospital rooms, how do these people not just crack under the pressure?
Burnout is a massive issue in the industry, honestly, and the sources are very candid about the immense toll the job takes. Susie Sivkov, a wellness expert and author in the notary space, addresses this directly. She notes that the heavy mental burden of managing these human interactions, combined with the logistical nightmare of traffic, weather, and tight schedules, creates severe physical and mental fatigue.
Yeah, she actually offers some incredibly specific coping techniques for mobile notaries. Things you wouldn't expect to find in a profession so focused on legal compliance. She suggests taking 10-minute quiet car meditations between appointments.
Just sitting in the parked car to clear cortisol levels before driving to the next house.
Yeah. She even suggests turning on a happy song and physically dancing for 5 minutes to regain mental clarity. It really highlights how much emotional regulation is required just to stay neutral at the table.
But alongside those wellness practices, they rely on the ultimate legal fortress to prevent stress. The notary journal.
Right. How does a journal act as a legal shield?
Because it is their primary defense against negligence lawsuits. Imagine 5 years from now, a family claims that their elderly father was forced to sign a will while heavily medicated, and they sue everyone involved, including the notary.
Right.
The notary is going to remember a random Tuesday signing from 5 years ago. Their journal is the irrefutable chronological record of exactly what happened.
And the best practices for keeping that journal are intense. You have to make immediate, granular entries right there at the table. You can't wait until you get home to fill it out. You include detailed context notes about the signer's alertness and behavior, and in many high-risk transactions, they capture a biometric thumbprint from the signer right there in the book.
Yeah, that thumbprint creates an undeniable physical link between the signer, the specific document, and the notary's presence. It is the ultimate proof of compliance.
But the sheer physical burden of all this, the driving, the heavy binders, the squishy tables, the weather, it's driving a massive technological shift. The sources detail the rise of remote online notarization, or RON.
Platforms like NotaryCam are fundamentally changing the architecture of the profession. With RON, the massive stacks of paper and the hardboard clipboards disappear entirely.
The mechanics of it are fascinating. The client uploads their document as a PDF to a secure portal. The system then uses knowledge-based authentication, or KBA, alongside credential analysis to verify their identity. But how does a webcam session actually verify identity better than a human looking at a driver's license?
Well, the credential analysis algorithm can detect microscopic flaws in a fake ID held up to a camouflage a human eye might miss. But the KBA is where it gets really robust. The system pulls data from decades of your credit history and public records to generate dynamic questions only you would know.
Like what kind of questions?
It will ask things like, which of these 4 addresses did you live at in 2014? Or what was the make of the vehicle you financed in 2018? You have to answer these within a strict time limit.
Oh, wow. So once they pass that, the notary and the signer connect over a secure webcam session. The notary applies a digital signature and an electronic seal, creating a tamper-evident PDF.
That tamper-evident technology is crucial. It uses cryptographic hashing. If anyone tries to alter a single pixel or change a number on that digital document after the notary seals it, the digital certificate breaks, visibly flagging the document as corrupted. It solves all the physical problems instantly. No bad weather, no uneven stamping surfaces, no lost return copies.
But if you are separated by a screen, how do you spot coercion? We just talked about Aida Gonzalez separating a vulnerable wife from an aggressive husband. Can you really read the room and catch dotted line anxiety through a webcam lens?
It is the most profound trade-off in the modern industry. While Ron provides incredibly robust algorithmic identity verification, it creates a psychological barrier, the screen itself.
Because you can't see who is standing just out of frame, holding a script for the signer to read.
Exactly. The notary must still rely heavily on their psychological training. They still have to ask the right open-ended questions. But now they have to do it by reading micro-expressions on a monitor, listening for off-camera whispers, and assessing willingness through a digital filter. It makes their role as an active gatekeeper significantly more challenging, yet just as vital. The technology changes the medium, but it absolutely does not change the mission.
So bringing this all back to you, the next time you are buying a house, finalizing an estate, or setting up a trust, and you sit down across from a notary public, you're going to see that interaction through a completely different lens. You will understand the hidden architecture of that moment. You will understand exactly why they politely decline to answer your simple questions about what a paragraph means, because doing so is the unauthorized practice of law. You'll know why they are so meticulous about sliding a hardboard clipboard under the paper before they press their stamp down. And most importantly, when they look you in the eye and ask, do you truly understand what you are signing, and are you doing this willingly? You'll know it's not just polite small talk. They aren't just pushing paper. They are actively protecting you, and they're protecting the legal integrity of the transaction.
And before we wrap up, projecting forward from what we've learned about remote online notarization leaves us with a provocative thought. As blockchain technology and artificial intelligence continue to advance rapidly, what happens when the concept of the human witness becomes fully automated?
You mean taking the empathetic human out of the equation entirely?
Potentially. Could the psychological anxiety of the dotted line one day be monitored and verified not by a trained human looking for red flags, but by an algorithm? Imagine an AI analyzing your biometric data through a webcam, your heart rate, your eye movements, your micro-expressions, to mathematically certify your willingness and mental capacity to sign a contract.
Wow. Will a machine ever be able to read a room like Aida Gonzalez did in that rehab center? It makes you realize how incredibly valuable that human element truly is. Because at the end of the day, whether it's a sophisticated AI algorithm or a person holding a heat-sensitive Trotter stamp, well, someone has to be the bouncer at the door. Someone has to check the ID, look for the hesitation, and make sure you actually want to walk inside.
Absolutely.
And hey, we highly encourage you to go grab the Notary Knowledge books by Derek Spruill to keep learning, and visit the Notary Knowledge website. If you like this episode, please rate the show, subscribe, and share the podcast with others. It really helps us out.
And remember, you can always email your questions to Derek at derekspruill.com. We will try to answer as soon as possible at the end of our shows.
Huge thanks to our amazing team. Executive producer Derek Spruill, lead writer Marylyn Trotter, graphics by Eddie Montes Travis, music by Thomas Bynum, and produced by Magnificent Works Business Solutions.
Don't just be listeners of the knowledge, be doers of the knowledge.
This is Notary Knowledge. Until next time.
Hands up. I'ma start a praise. I'ma start a praise.
Are you an aspiring notary looking to join millions of other notaries? Start your journey with the Notary Public Foundation by Derek Spruill. This essential guide provides the step-by-step process to becoming commissioned in your state. Don't stumble into the role. Walk into it with confidence. Grab your copy of The Notary Public Foundation by Derek Spruill on Amazon today.